All right. Look at that. We're in business. We're recording. All righty. So I am going to point you to my HCDE 532 Make Your Website Responsive lecture. And I'm also going to open up the Create an Image Slider with jQuery lecture. And in there, let's see, website's responsive. Did I even open that up? Responsive, talking to myself, it's being recorded. You get home. And this one I've already broken up into the include. So again, for you in WEB200, for your page templates, again, page templates are a separate assignment from prototype, true or false? Put your templates in a folder called Put your prototypes in a folder called or fine. Template should go in a templates folder. Okay. So realistically, like I said, and this is true. If you want to take a look at the work process, we could take a look at the RIW one or Jet City one or any one that I'm totally sick of. Let's take a look at a new one. So if we go trends, no, real self dot so cute. Real self dot premium DW dot relia. I'm less dyslexic. Got one laugh. I know it's late at night. So basically what I do is, this is what I want you guys to do, is put your templates in a folder called templates. And then, so when I was first doing this build, I only had one page to do. How many pages did I do? Probably did it link to? Yeah. So I did the index.html and then I did single.html to get the build down, including some of the jQuery stuff. The design changed after a while. So if we went to WordPress, so if you don't get everything perfect from your template and it changes during your prototype phase, that's fine. But at least, so it finally changed. Here's a little bit of jQuery to make that happen. So this is what we were talking about Milo earlier. For your page templates, then to turn in your page templates, I want you to do your home and one main page or one other page, whatever it is. All templates must be responsive for desktop and mobile platforms. So that means that you are likely going to be using your HTML, your CSS, and your jQuery or JavaScript, right? You're not going to be doing PHP includes for your templates. Once you get your templates done and built solidly, like this, right, then you will convert that into a multi-page prototype. Does that make sense? Okay. So where we got to on Tuesday was we got through doing the percentages, layout, and contracting and expanding, and then we left off and we're going to talk about tonight about, well, then if if we get to, and let's just go into a page like this. So if we get to a certain point, a certain break point where either we think that, because I'm recording this and it's on the screen, I'm going to sit my ass down instead of. I've been watching my lectures back online on YouTube, and when I go to the projector and start pointing, nobody knows, yeah, you can't hear me, but nobody knows when they're watching it what I'm pointing at. So I have to transition into doing this. So you get your text column here and your sidebar column over there, and at a certain point, you know, it gets too squished and you want to go to this type of layout, right? Huh? Oh, yeah. We're going to move on from that. So certain websites dictate doing it at certain different sizes. On this demo, that breakpoint then that we did this, it used to be called HCD 598. So if I go to my style sheet, then you can see I'm going desktop down, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And then at 1024 or below, that's where then I'm converting my sidebar and my text to a percentage, my content area, the parent element. I had previously switched it to a max width up above so that it would go above the 1024 mark, or when you went above the 1024 mark, it would stop at 940. But as you go below that and come in, it will then start to condense, right? So that's width, fixed width versus max width, where then as you come in, your parent element will start to contract. Your children elements at a certain point in time, you have to change them to percentages. And then as you come in, at another certain point in time, one of two things happens. One, now this navigation could still be read. You know, we could do a navigation pattern where it just kind of stacks. In other words, Responsive Navigation Patterns by Brad Frost. We might have already looked at that in this classroom, but that's where one of the schemas is, as it comes in, you can have your navigation stack like that, right? But in terms of, well, it's up to you. I certainly prefer the pull the navigation out of the way and then do the click, open, click, close, okay? Yeah, Milo. Yes. In other words, you're saying, because I'm a geek, I do this. And then it's closed and it goes away. Yes. We'll talk about that. Nobody else but us does that, right? But, you know, the Seattle Central website, again, I've done this many times on video and they haven't caught on yet. Now, I count on errors on other websites. Like I went to the A List Apart site in my class last night to talk about the mobile first, the big graphic. Look what they did. They heard me talking about it on YouTube and they changed it. This graphic used to take up the whole desktop space. They've changed it now. It's actually a little more usable. Yay, people listen. I'm taking full credit, Rosie. Yeah, I totally. I'm taking full credit. Where was I? It's that kind of thing. So on the Seattle Central one, same thing, right? If we come in like this and we go, yay, and then close it and we go back. Oh, where'd my navigation go? Does anybody ever realize that on the Seattle Central website? Do not tell them. Okay. So that's what Milo is referring to. Versus if you are on my business site, for instance, and we go in and I do the breakpoint of 800 where it snaps like this, we can go, yay, close it. And then as we go above it, it comes back, right? So yeah, we'll talk about that. So basically, let's just go back to this right here. What is this function? Toggle. Where does it come from? Well, we're going to do it with jQuery, but let me show you where, in other words, how many of you have taken the JavaScript class? Okay. And I don't know to the extent that they're covering JavaScript or jQuery in WEB200. I do know that it sounds like the 240 class is coming before the JavaScript class now, right? So anywhere you slice it, let's go over what is happening. Okay, so JavaScript. What is JavaScript? Again, if we go to my good old Flickr whiteboard drawings, so here is the Holy Trinity of webs. And by Holy Trinity, I mean I'm still a recovering Catholic school. Okay? So we want to typically separate our HTML markup, our CSS, and our JavaScript. They perform 3 different functions. Our markup, our structure, how that structure gets presented visually, right, layout-wise, and then how things interact client side, not server side, client side. Okay? PHP then, on the other hand, is server side that pre-processes our HTML markup. Okay? So this right here is does everybody understand this key concept here? Okay. So if you understand that key concept, we can look at some very old JavaScript where this gets, well, pre this Holy Trinity of website. So if we go to have a redirect. Let's say something like this, where I taught a version of WEB200 way long time ago. But this right here is the same function as this. Okay? So just uploaded my old school shit, which is true, it's my old school shit. And if we go to 120, the index page, and I go back here and I go to scripts and I open up sliding menu. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is an old school JavaScript function, right? That when this page, this index.php page, meaning this page, loads, it then wants to load this JavaScript. This JavaScript is that sliding menu that I just opened up. Sliding menu. So, function. The name of the function is sliding menu. You can pass one argument or one parameter through said function. Who's with me so far? Yeah? Good. Good. Oh, that's right. Good, good, good. Okay. So, yes, I was. Okay. So, here we're setting up a variable called this menu. This menu equals document object model, document dot get element by ID, object ID, which that you can then pass as an argument through the function, dot style, meaning, here's a conditional statement, if this menu, right, meaning whatever you've passed through there, and look at you, you're understanding this, which is awesome. Nice. So dot display, meaning style, what is the, so style can refer to different things, but in this case, it's going to refer to display, is equal to block. Then, this is where we go back here and say, this is, again, the old school way of doing JavaScript, where instead of separating JavaScript from the HTML markup, this was back in the day when you still split, when you still put event handlers, or some people call them event listeners, into the markup. So the event handler or listener on click. So when I would click the label of lectures, on click, call the function sliding menu, pass the argument or parameter, and I'll let you guys split hairs and have that argument and wrestle and match yourself. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? What's an argument versus a parameter? Right. It's sure, sounds great. Sure, sounds great. Sounds, sure. No, again, you can, is JavaScript an object-oriented language? Right. See what I'm saying? Okay. So, on click, call the function sliding menu, and pass the argument of lectures links. What does the argument of lectures links refer to? This ID of lectures link. So basically, on click of lectures, if lectures, let's say, is equal to block, then on click, set it to display none. Else, set it to display block. If it's open, display block, set it to display closed, or none. So on and so forth. Let's actually see how that when we inspect it. I don't think it actually, you don't see, oh, there you go. Yeah, it does put in an inline style, right? So that's how that's controlled, right? Does that make sense? Huh? No. I'm just showing you the old school where this comes from, okay? That's JavaScript. So what is jQuery then? So basically, developers back in those days came across a lot of applications, if you will, interaction, behaviors, whatever you want to say, that everybody, in other words, they were coming across, we need a something that does the open and close thing. So instead of you writing your function and you writing your function and you writing your function, why don't we write a standard function into a library that we call jQuery? That's a pretty awesome way to describe it, right? Yes. So it's basically shorthand. Somebody said shorthand, right? So then, if I then go to what I had opened here originally, toggle menu, okay? So here is the image ID of toggle, which is that toggle PNG. I don't do it with a graphic anymore. I use a glyph instead. I'll show you the glyph. So first and foremost, what we have to do is we have to utilize jQuery like this, we have to access the jQuery library. So if we look at the jQuery library, somewhere in here is the function of toggle and slide toggle. Okay, so this looks like what you would see in the X files, right? Is my joke. Some kind of alien language, right? Just know that somewhere in there is the function of toggle. As well, what does this $sign represent? The $sign in this instance is shorthand for what? True and not true. In this instance, what is it shorthand for? You're getting close. It is shorthand, so let's go back to the old school JavaScript file. In this instance, that $sign is shorthand for get element by ID. Which element? Navigation. So this $sign can be, in this instance here, right, is shorthand for either get element by ID, get element by class name, get element by tag name. Okay, so that's how jQuery has then given us the shorthand where we can write much more. In other words, I feel like jQuery has allowed me to understand or bring it back to a rudimentary programmer's conditional logic structure. If this, do that. If this, do that. Right? Grab this, do that with it. Right? So get element by ID. So let's say it like this. Here, get element by ID. Which ID? Toggle. That image. So get that element ID of toggle, and when that toggle is clicked, call a function. Do a function. Do something. So here, instead of naming a function, this is what type of a function? an anonymous function. Okay? So this anonymous function is basically inside of parentheses, right? So that means that function is now an argument or a parameter that we are passing through the event handler of click. What are you clicking? Toggle. So what do you do when you click on toggle? You go get element by ID of navigation and perform the toggle function, which that toggle function then goes into, did I close it already? The jQuery library file. In here, and whatever toggle, whatever the statement's a toggle, perform that task. Okay? So here, so that's where on this one, too many tabs open. If display none. So currently, navigation at less than 600 is set to display none. Okay? So when clicked, change it to display block. When clicked again, change it to display none. Okay? So this is what happens when you go back above the breakpoint of 600. You have now written an inline style of display none. So that's why it appears to be closed. So what do you do? Div ID navigation, display none, right? Or actually on resize, set display. Well, it's actually reloaded here. Let's reload this page so it gets rid of that inline style. Okay. So now, on this idea of navigation, there's no inline style. Inline style, display block. Inline style, display none. Why does it appear then? Notice it changes here back to display block. Why? Because I told it to is the answer. So, for a long time, I thought to myself, I've heard people say, what is programming? And you may have heard this. What is programming? It's a set of instructions. It's a set of instructions. So says Simon on lynda.com. So, wow, that big application can't just be a set of instructions. Yes, it's miles and miles and miles of instructions. Meaning, go get the ID of toggle. When toggle is clicked, perform the function on the ID of navigation, perform the function of slide toggle. Slide toggle is the sexy one, right? It's the Tom Cruise. It's the Tom Cruise of toggles. Because he comes sliding in risky business. It is, come on! Okay. Anyway. So, perform that slide toggle. Okay, so we've got that set of instructions going on. But on navigation, if window inner width is less than 801 on resize when we go back and forth. See how it changes display, non-display block after, let's move this up. So on window resize, see how it changes. To start out with, on page load, that doesn't get triggered. Okay, so if we look at then, so on get element by ID or the window, get element by, you know, the browser window. When the window loads, function, make sure all this stuff is live and ready to go. But when the window is resized, if it resizes at less than 801, navigation hide. Else, greater than 800, show. Set of instructions. Now, Bree can tell you all about the iOS bug. Let's put it this way. I don't know if they fixed it in that CSS menu maker thing or not, right? But there is a bug in, not necessarily a bug, but in iOS 8 on the iPhone. Well, the iPhone in iOS 8, as you scrolled up, the viewport's resized. So if you put this in there, if when you resized, the viewport was less than 801, it would hide the menu. Thereby, you would open the menu and start to scroll up and the menu would hide. Does that make sense? Well, it is here. Meaning, I then, to get around that, had to figure out a solution. Meaning I had to write my own code. Oh. You mean you had to write your own code to figure something out? So I loaded the window.innerWidth as a variable when the window loaded. Called it load width. If load width on resize again, if load width is not equal to window.innerWidth. So that'll trigger for width only and not vertical resize. Perform this. Now, what happens if, does that make sense? Yeah. But I mean, in terms of its slide toggle menu, here it is. I would really suggest to you guys that you hammer this stuff out. Right? So that if and when you have more complicated stuff to tackle, like, well, what happens if you have this website that you need a whole bunch of submenu items to toggle like this. And you want then to have, let's say, this clickable to go to the gateway page. This web, like any one of my main navigation items. If you click on it, the action is go to that page because the anchor tag has told you to go to that page. Meaning, on the href and the anchor tag, go to that page. Okay? Well, what if, when you're in mobile view, instead of, let's go back to the home page here, refresh. What do we want to go to the gateway page in mobile view? Yes or no? Well, let's say it like this. Do I, in desktop view, I want to go to the gateway page, right? So let me open that new tab. I want to go to the gateway page, and I will see in desktop view, I will see this whole submenu, right? Is it practical then to in mobile view to go to the gateway page? No, it's not, right? Because if I have that gateway page open, let's say I went to Web170 and it loaded the page here in mobile. Where's my submenu? Way, 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 way. Oh, where is it? So I made a design choice of, in mobile view, then, display the submenu here. So you don't go to the gateway page. So two different actions. So what's happening here is in mobile view, that link is still a href, right? But somebody's got the flu. Somebody had the flu. I just got a notification. It happens. Yeah. So if I go to then my school toggle menu, here it is. So I've gone from when the window loads, enable the click function on toggle to open and close the navigation, which is the basis of the whole thing. To, again, when the window loads, nav items slide toggle. Well, when does nav items slide toggle? Notice it is inside of anonymous function that is given a variable. So the variable main toggle then, when you get element by ID, nav title on click trigger main toggle. Trigger the slide toggle function. As well, on the nav glyph, toggle class open. nav glyph. See the hamburger menu that I have as a glyph? Changes to an X. Because it now, that ID of nav glyph also has a class of opened. And on the before pseudo element of navglyph.opened pseudo element before, I'm saying change it to the content of X. Okay. Similarly, this little thing right here, if I inspect that, the after, where is it? Right there. See how it's that upside down caret? It now changes to this one because I have then said, watch right here, that class opened, closed, or nothing. Opened, default, open, default. So first and foremost, what I had to do was get element by ID, nav items li main a, append a span tag onto it. Create the span tag to attach the toggle icon to. I'm not going to say that out loud. Right? On click, call the subtoggle function. So I have then a variable for subtoggle, which calls the function anonymously. You can pass a parameter through there. Okay? That's where you say this, next. In other words, I only want to open up the submenu of the one list item that I clicked on. That's where you use the next. So on and so forth. You guys can maybe possibly read through the rest of this yourself. But what I had to do was figure out and troubleshoot what every condition in this menu was, and write an instruction and of how I wanted it to behave. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody? So, did I lose anybody? Thank God you recorded it as I'm on Facebook over here. Okay. So for you guys that have not done JavaScript, what I would recommend is that you look at this one, where all you're simply doing is either you're loading an image or a glyph, and instead of your list items being next to each other now, at the media query of wherever you do that breakpoint, you then make them display block, right? And then you probably should, if you've done it correctly, on this anchor tag, you've said display block, so that notice that as I'm touching over here, this is highlighting and it's still a click state for the fat fingers, right? So basically what I'm saying is, in that HCDE Make It Responsive lecture, this, not this one. But you could very well just, you know, open the submenu. So the one that does the submenu one, let's say it like this. So here's then, let's say that this one is the very rudimentary slide toggle, and that's that. This one here how this one works is I don't have any way to open up the submenu here. But instead, what I'm doing is if I go to services and I go back to the menu here and open it up again, then my submenu displays there. Okay? So what I'm saying is on the home page, if we look at inspect this, this submenu actually exists there. I've just set it to display none. So they're all there. When we click on services then, and we open it back up, this is where, why does this one show and not the other ones? You're learning. Awesome, I know. I am saying display block, current menu item. So the submenu inside the list item that says current menu item. What we're going to do with PHP down the road is whatever section you're in, you're going to write a class of current into the menu item. So you could theoretically do the same thing like that. This is done in WordPress, that's how. So next week, we're going to talk about how to write the class of current into your menu item, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So this is then the more secondary robust one, right? That basically has built into it the, so it's the same thing, right? This toggle. This basically disables the anchor tag target. I don't really need this there, right? Which basically says if there's, let's see. Disable the target of this href. I don't even need to have that there, right? But you can disable the anchor tag. Click. That's what I did in this one, where prevent default, disable the href on the main menu item. So in other words, this function then calls a bunch of different statements. So you can just stack all your statements and what you want to happen for that function. Do all this, or do this. Okay? So this is the more complex one. So where you guys should start out, if this is all new to you, right, is go to this make your website responsive one, and then it describes down here. Again, this, I'll say it like this. This is the more updated lecture for the WEB200 class. I just originally wrote it for the HCD 532 class because they pay me more. I'm kidding. I wrote it for you guys too. Okay? I really did. I wrote it for this. I wrote one lecture for 2 different classes. It's great when that can happen. So step 5, create the toggle menu. That's where it goes through. You can download the image, or you can use a glyph. So the hamburger icon glyph is this. So that's where then it shows you, first and foremost, put the jQuery API link in, and then put your script for when the window loads. Enable the function upon window load. When you click toggle, trigger the function of toggle the navigation ID. Probably. Go grab the latest one then. Yeah. I should put a C also here, is what I'm saying. So does that help you out with the responsive toggle stuff and the responsive layout and everything? Yeah? Helps you wrap your head around it? Yeah, so I used to teach JavaScript way back in like 2003, 2004, back in the online event handler days. And then I didn't feel really confident in my JavaScript to really teach it at a developer level. I was teaching designers, so I kind of backed out from teaching it. And I left JavaScript. I had an affair with JavaScript back in the early 2000s. We went our separate ways. We saw other people. And then after jQuery or JavaScript updated or came around with jQuery and DOM scripting, and you separated everything. Then I started another affair with jQuery, and I'm not leaving jQuery, right? Because to me, it's like, oh, wow, you know, it's really broken it down to these rudimentary functions that we need, and then we can really write it in terms of just the conditional structure, right? You know, if this, do that. Else do this. Now do this. Now do that. Now do this. Now do that. Right? So, and like I said, that's how last spring when I updated my website to being responsive. Here's what stopped me from making my website responsive in the first place was the way I have my navigational scheme written here is all these are separated out into these chunks with custom fields in WordPress, so I'm not using the WordPress menu system. I've written it all by hand to do it. So what I had to do was I had to write then so last spring I finally tackled it, and I wrote my main menu function here. Once I accomplished that, then I went and wrote this jQuery. And like I said, I hadn't done a lot of JavaScript in a long time, and I just was like, you know, got back into it. And when I started writing it as jQuery instead of JavaScript, it was just like, oh man, that's so much, you know, it's so much more like PHP where it's just, you know, real conditional, do this, do that, do this, you know, along the lines of, you know, for each one of these, if, else, you know, write out some HTML. So, all right. Does that help you guys visualize the toggle menu and then the responsive stuff and whatnot? Like I said, next week, what we're going to do is I am going to, I have the one lecture written up for WEB200, but then we're also going to go to this multiple pages for your website where we talk about how to do the include files, right? And then here, if the page is equal to about, write the class of current into the about, you know, menu, etc. And we can do that with a title tag. We can do that with a couple of other things as well. But we'll discuss real basic PHP conditional logic to kind of do that. I'm done talking for this evening. feel like I've talked too much in this class. Any questions? Templates are due the end of next week. Yeah, into next week, right? No, into the week after? Okay. Whatever the schedule says, let's actually make sure we go to the... My site is running a lot faster. They moved it to a new server. Yeah, now it's running pretty fast, isn't it? Yeah, they moved it to it. It's their equipment at DreamHost that's what's happening, right? They've moved it a few times in the last year or so. So, no, I just did it. So yeah, according to the schedule, winter, today is the 3rd. Your page templates are due the 18th. So, all right, so shutting down now with Victoria, if you're watching, see you later. She was watching the HCD one yesterday. And so during class, I gave her a shout out. And notice this is on recording right now. So, hey, Victoria, if you're watching, send me a Facebook message. So yesterday during class, right, I gave her a shout out. If she's watching, and then I got a Facebook message, I'm watching. She's watching it live.